Stratego is a classic board game that requires planning, deception, and most importantly, strategy. In today's video, I'm going to give you 10 different strategy tips to help you crush your friends at Stratego, here today on Legendary Tactics. Stratego looks simple. Each player has 40 pieces hidden from their opponent's view that represent different ranks in their army, squeezed onto a 10 by 10 grid. The objective of the game is simply to either capture the opponent's flag or to eliminate all of the enemy pieces. But there is a lot of strategy here, and that's what we will take a look at now. Number 1. Placing your flag. It goes without saying that your flag is the most important piece in the game, as it determines the winner if it's captured. And because your flag doesn't move, you can help or hinder your cause at setup. There are 3 typical strategies here. First, picking a corner and surrounding your flag with bombs. Perhaps with a decoy, likely a sergeant, placed in the opposite corner to potentially throw off your opponent. Second is a more balanced approach, where the flag is placed around the center rear of your formation. Finally, there is the bluff approach, where the flag is placed far forward in an attempt to surprise and deceive your opponent. After all, who would be silly enough to put one's flag in an unsafe spot? All of these can work, depending on your playstyle and that of your opponents. However, this might be the strongest setup worth considering. The main advantage here is that it takes a miner 2 moves to break through, and the sergeant placed inside means it will, in practical terms, actually take 2 miners to get in. So even if your opponent knows exactly where the flag is, it will still be difficult to enter the fortress. It does have a disadvantage in that one does lose the element of surprise that a bomb placed in a random location provides. This can have some value, as an enemy piece that breaks through can have its rampage stopped unexpectedly with a nasty and sudden bomb. Number 2, make a plan. Before you set up or start moving your pieces, take a moment to consider your overall strategy. This plan may depend on your style of play. Do you want to focus on defense, or do you want to go on the offensive and try to capture your opponent's flag as quickly as possible? And you have to consider what style you typically play, perhaps deliberately changing it to deceive your opponent. One should never be too predictable. Decide on a plan and stick to it as much as possible, but be prepared to adapt if circumstances change. Number 3, manage your higher ranking pieces wisely. Most players realize that higher ranking pieces such as the Marshal and General are powerful and should be protected. Many players recommend placing them behind your lower ranking pieces, or in a location where they are difficult to attack, likely on the 3rd rank or the 2nd rank if they're behind a lake. You also generally want them protecting your flag, or at least within easy reach. Don't reveal your stronger pieces too soon. Keep your stronger pieces hidden for as long as possible to make it harder for your opponent to come up with a plan to attack them. And set up your pieces in a way where they synergistically protect each other. For example, on one side of the board you could have the Colonel and the Marshal, and the other side of the board could be protected by the General and the Spy. That way, a General that kills your Colonel could be taken out by your Marshal. Marshal taking out your General could then be eliminated by the Spy next door. And scatter your high-ranking pieces throughout your setup, so if an opponent's piece ends up breaking through, you want to be able to end their rampage quickly. Don't put your most powerful pieces on the back row, however, as it is just too time-consuming to bring them up front. Number 4, understand the nature of the map. There are 3 lanes of approach, on the left, on the right, and in the center. Generally, one wants to have balanced forces on the left and the right, with a mixture of unit strength. In the center, having your strongest pieces, including the Spy in that vicinity, can give you a lot of flexibility. Make it an early priority to open up the rank of spaces right beneath the lakes by advancing units towards the center. This gives you the ability to move powerful pieces back and forth easily to counter threats. After that, play conservatively and consider taking more of a hit-and-run approach, killing a known enemy piece quickly before dashing back to your line without giving too much away. Be patient and force your opponent to come to you. Number 5, use your scouts effectively. Scouts are the lowest ranking pieces in the game, but they can be very useful for gathering information about your opponent's position. Scouts are the only pieces that can move multiple spaces on their turn, making them very valuable for that reconnaissance. Use them to scout out your opponent's flag and other high-ranking pieces, but don't waste them. Most players put them on their front rank and send them blindly into the enemy front line right at the beginning of the game, which doesn't add a lot of value. You may only be identifying low-ranked pieces in a low-leverage situation. But do try to take out your opponent's scouts as soon as possible by running them down or bluffing to tempt your opponent into wasting one to see what unit you have. Try to lure their scouts into traps, as capturing their scouts will really limit their mobility and their ability to safely gather information. And be sure to save some scouts for the endgame by putting at least a couple of them towards the back, as you will always need the ability to affordably identify enemy pieces. And once the enemy flag has been located, the scout's movement ability can end the game quickly and in your favor, as you zip across the board to capture it in 1 or 2 moves, leaving the enemy pieces standing still in shock. Number 6, pay attention to your opponent's movements. Observing your opponent's movements can give you valuable information about their strategy and the strength and location of their pieces. This will take a good memory, some bluffing to draw them out, and a bit of luck. But arguably, this is the heart of the game. This information will help you plan your own moves more effectively. At the same time, do your best to obscure your movements by being unpredictable. Advance weak pieces boldly, or make strong pieces retreat when approached by known weaker pieces. Be wary of attacking pieces that do not move, as they are likely a bomb or a high-ranking piece that has not been needed yet, and which does not want to give away its position. Number 7, don't be afraid to sacrifice pieces. Sometimes it may be necessary to sacrifice a weaker piece in order to later capture a stronger piece or get closer to your opponent's flag. That said, try to eliminate identified enemy pieces only with your pieces that are 1 strength level higher, in order to protect the identity of your most highly ranked pieces. For example, keep your sergeants, your 4s, in around the bombs protecting your flags so that they can take out any approaching miners, but don't give the opponent much in the way of useful information. Also, sacrifice pieces when you see it will give you a game-winning advantage. For example, if you have an edge in colonels, which are the 8s, using your marshal, your 10, to take out their marshal, and your general, the 9, to capture their general, leaves you with the most powerful piece on the board. For all intents and purposes, your colonels are now marshals. Number 8, use your miners effectively. Miners are very valuable pieces because they can defuse bombs, which can be a major obstacle to your progress. And because they will likely be necessary to ultimately reach the flag, which is typically surrounded by said bombs. Keep your miners safe, protected by strong pieces, generally saving them for the end game. And if you can eliminate all the enemy miners, if your flag is surrounded by bombs, then you have guaranteed at least a drawn game. Number 9, be careful with your bombs. Bombs can be a powerful weapon, but they can also be a liability, being unable to move and posing no threat if your opponent knows or suspects it is there and has a miner approaching. Try to place your bombs in strategic locations where they are less likely to be quickly and easily defused, in their standard roll around your flag, or even randomly to create a trap for your opponent to run into. Number 10, remember where your enemy's pieces are. Obviously, remembering the location of bombs and powerful pieces will let you know exactly what you need to do to gain a tactical advantage. If you can't remember everything, just work on remembering the location of 7 key pieces: the marshal, which is the 10, the general, which is the 9, the colonels, which are the 8s, and the majors, which are the 7s. And keeping in mind the composition of the enemy's force, knowing how many miners, scouts, or higher ranked pieces are left in the game is very important information that will help dictate your strategic approach. By following these strategies and tips, you should be well on your way to becoming a skilled Stratego player. Remember to always think ahead and plan your moves carefully, and don't be afraid to take risks when the opportunity arises. Thank you for watching. This is Legendary Tactics.